So we are continuing with shares we started in the last class. And we did, here's what we know so far. Yeah. So when you're talking about shares, we said, talking about the level of interest that you have in a company, quantified in monetary terms. So share itself is not really money. Shares is not money. Okay. We just attach a money value to it. So it doesn't really make it money. It's like the same way your phone has a value. So your phone is not money. Okay. It just has a value and then you can sell it for money. So the same thing happens with shares. So the idea is if there is the company, then you want a piece of the company. What is the value of this piece? Okay, so you say the smallest value, 1 share is equals to, let's say, 10 shillings, and you have 200,000 shares. So then at this point, at that price point, then your value is 2M. But of course, if this number goes up, the value goes up. If that number goes down, then the value goes down. So that's pretty much the thing with shares. And the reason why it's important, it's because it's one of those things that is used to finance a company, because we said when it comes to financing any company, choice 1, you can use your own money. Choice 2, you can use other people's money. Usually that's just it. So your own money here means what do you get out of it? Well, it means you get a share of the company, shares of the company. And then that makes you shareholder. Or if it is a guarantee, so whatever. But the point is, we are going with shares. Now, other people's money means debt capital, so the things like bonds and debentures. So you're not interested in that yet. We'll look at that in topic 6. But for now, financing the company using our own money, that is by giving the company money, and the company gives you shares, or you own piece or part of the company. So we agreed to that, and we said that when it comes to these shares, there are 2 types. There are 3 types, but we talked about 2 types. Which are these 2 types of shares? Shares, what you can and which one? Guys? Rama? Annette? Types of shares, which one and which one? Annette, are you there? Hmm? Come again? Shares, which type of shares and which type of shares?
Ordinary shares and preference shares.
Okay, thanks, Rama. So there's that ordinary and preference. And so that's the thing. And so let's move on anyway, because right. So now today let's talk about and other stuff. So today let's look at share warrant certificate and well, the CDS thing is not really, but so let's look at these ones. Okay. And when we talk about share warrant, it just comes down to whether or not you own those shares or you don't. So a warrant document is just stating that you're entitled to a given number of shares, meaning that if you buy shares, so let's say some guy here, John, decides that they want Safaricom share. Okay, let me use this one. So if you have this guy called John, and he's trying to own shares in XYZ. So the first thing you need to understand is that companies don't just sell you shares because you want to buy shares. Okay, they don't always need your money. And even if those shares are in like in the securities exchange, you just don't go there and buy shares. You only buy shares if one, shares are available, and two, the company will still reserve the right to disapprove that purchase. And by the company, I mean the board of directors. So if John wants to buy shares from this company, then the question is it good for the company or not? Does the company even want an extra money? So the company, through the board, might find out that John is actually interested in a takeover. Okay. What is a takeover in relation to companies? You don't understand if you say you're trying to do a takeover, so say takeover, whichever. What is a takeover in relation to companies? Rama? Guys, you need to answer questions because what's the point of attending class if you're not going to try? So if you say takeover, what are you talking about? Hello?
And the new management or new ownership.
So, no, that's receivership. Okay, Rama? Whatever you're defining, that's receivership. So there's a difference between receivership and takeover. Takeover just means, as it suggests, you're trying to take over a company. Okay, either you're trying to buy the company or you're trying to control. The point is you want the company to be under your control. So you probably don't even need to put a new management there if you want. But like if company A decides to buy 51% of company B, so yeah, I mean, we own the company, but the question is, do we still want it to continue running or not? So you can completely absorb it and then it just becomes part of it by voting to do that. So because most of the time, these directors, the board, okay, they're trying to avoid those kind of problems. So they're not always going to be saying, yes, you want to buy shares, go ahead and buy. They might decide not to sell you the shares. So what happens is that John here, so let's go back to John, is interested in XYZ shares. So when John makes an offer, we need to understand again, contract laws. John makes an offer to buy these shares by filling in the proposal forms and whatever. Now, this company has a choice. They can accept, or they can reject, or they can counter John's offer. So John wanted 10,000 shares. So the company can decide that we don't want to give you 10,000 shares, we'd rather buy 5,000. So if the company does that, they're like, this was your offer, but this is what you're going to give you. Or they can give the 10,000, but in this case, let's assume they've given less. So what happens is that John will be given a share warrant. So a document saying you are entitled to 5,000 shares. Now the same goes for 10,000, even if they decide, okay, you're going to sell you the 10,000 that you had initially asked for. So they'll still give a warrant. So the warrant is what comes before a share certificate. Okay. It's a company's way of saying, here's the deal, here's what you want, here's what you're giving. Are you willing to take it or not? So the warrant does that. And then once you pay for that, then, once you pay for the shares, then they can change that warrant and then you get a share certificate, which now becomes proof that you own those shares. Okay. So what is a share warrant? It's a document issued showing the shares you're entitled. And nowadays, these things happen online. So it could just be some communication, some online communication. Received a message via your app or via your email, whatever. It doesn't have to be a physical document. Is that clear? Are we together?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So that's the thing, okay? So when you're buying shares, that's pretty much how that one plays out. So you start with that, and then it goes that way. So you start, it's just the same. You make an offer, then they can accept the offer. And then obviously you're going to provide consideration, in this case, the price, and you pretty much have a deal. But it's not automatic. That is the reason why when you watch like a few months back, when the guy was the name of that politician, that Kikuyu politician, what is his name? Ndindinyoro or something. When it was like I own 15% shares in KPLC, it's like not really. I mean, it's not that simple. Yeah. So it's either that is just what you've told the media, but how did they approve that? Because it's always there's always a problem when a human being owns 10% shares plus of a company. Okay. In fact, you're going to be put in a different register, the beneficial owners sort of register. Now, moving on. So then we have offenses in connection with shares, warrants. So you could have issues like forgery, alteration, and fraud. So these are some of the offenses that can happen there, because you need to understand the way companies work, okay? A company, we said, the people who form a company will end up becoming part of the management. And then there's going to be that veil. And then this is what the rest of the world can see as a company. So the ownership of the company and the employees of the company are not even on the same category. So ownership of the company will just depend on the shares that you have, which means if you forge or if you change these shares in any way, then that can alter the structure of the company. So that becomes a problem. I mean, look at something like this. So let's say, and we'll see this again, share capital. So we have preference shareholders and we have ordinary shareholders. And let's say there's there's 1 million preference shares and there's 1 million ordinary shares. I mean, this is a bad way to structure a company, but for argument's sake, let's say that's how it is. And then the board calls for a meeting of all shareholders. But there was a side meeting with these people telling them that we need you guys to vote, okay, on consolidation. We're going to consolidate ordinary shares. So we need you guys to vote on that. Meaning what? We are going to merge them. And then they say that they're going to go ahead. Okay. So that's okay. So they say they're going to consolidate these shares. So basically merge the shares. For every two, they merge them into one. And so there's a meeting, and so they end up doing that. So now you see, these shares are now down to 500,000. These guys, ukuni 1 million. And then, so that has happened. And then now there's another vote, okay, in which they are voting on whether this company should be sold to another company or not. So you see, all these people, even if they vote, these guys are going to win because they have most of the shares. And if these guys are already told you need to vote yes, then it doesn't matter how much these people vote. Okay. I mean, these are very simplified examples, but my point is, I'm just trying to say that when it comes to shares, when it comes to running of the company, it always just comes down to who has majority of the shares and how are they using those shares. That is the reason why, if there is fraud, okay, if there is fraud, or if you access those shares through forgery or an alteration that, well, didn't go through the proper channels, there was no meeting, there was no proper communication, then that becomes an issue, becomes an offense. And it's not just an offense, it's a criminal offense. So if you're asked for offenses against this one, then these are the kind of offense that you can anticipate in this case. Is that okay?
Yes.
Annette, are we together? Or did you just sign up and left?
Yes, we are together.
Okay, you need to participate because at some point you're going to be the only one in the class. So now moving on. Then we have, so remember, share warrant is what you are given when you buy shares. It's not proof that you own those shares. The proof that you own those shares is now going to be share certificate. Okay, but then remember, again, this is just like the theory part. Nowadays, as I said, these things, they're just done electronically. It's so fast that you won't even notice when the difference between warrant and certificate and all that. I mean, the difference is going to be there in the paper trail, but it's like, you know, the way you look at your M-Pesa and then you think you have money. You don't have money, okay? You just have a message. Like, have you ever asked yourself, how does it work? Because you look at your phone and then the balance says something like, you know, 37,000. So, you know, you have that in your M-Pesa and then you think, yeah, I have money. No, you have a message. Okay? You have a message. That's it. And then when you go and buy something, you're not sending money, technically. What you're sending is, so if this is you and this is the guy, okay? So they also just receive a message saying that, okay, now look, you have 570. They don't, so basically it's just data that you are moving around. You're just sending messages, okay? It's not actual cash. So the actual cash in circulation is actually less than the amount of money that, you know, if you check all M-Pesas and Airtel money, okay, and all the bank account numbers, and then we add all that, that is the physical cash that is in circulation, the one that you can touch, is very little, okay? Because we don't need to print that money as long as people continue to rely on that message. So the same thing happens with shares, okay? Nowadays, that's the way it is. You just get a confirmation that now you own Safaricom shares. Kitambo, and by Kitambo I mean before 2000, because 2000 is when the CDS system was created. You physically had a certificate. Okay, you had a certificate with the company seal saying these are the number of shares you have. And if that certificate gets old, you took it back and you're given a new one. Of course, most of the time you had to protect it. And that is why if you look at like grandmothers and grandfathers, I mean, if they're still there, the ones who are business savvy, they'll show you like, here's this document, it's a bond. Okay, these are bonds that I bought, bear a bond, and now as your inheritance, here it is. This one is worth, I don't know, probably like 500,000, depending on how savvy your grandparents were. And then you get that. But nowadays, it's just a digital transfer. That's the way it is. So the same thing goes here. So you may not really notice this. You may not really notice that now I have a warrant, and then nope, it's just going to be a confirmation. But the thing to remember is that the warrant shows what you're entitled to. The certificate shows proof of what you own. So, and the reason why companies do that is because they're protecting themselves as far as the law of contract is concerned. Now, again, if there's any question you can ask. Now, regarding the certificate. So the general rules, because you can still use physical certificates. It just depends on how much share you're buying. Not everybody's going to buy shares through some mobile app. So within 2 months, you should be getting your cert after allotment if the entire process goes through. The certificate is actually the prima facie. On the face of it, the first proof, okay, of evidence, or the first evidence showing what you're entitled to. You don't even need anything else. So once it's like, if I ask you, can you prove that you're a Kenyan? Okay, what do you use to prove that you're a Kenyan? Now you might say, here's my birth certificate, but normally, depending on how old you are, you'll just produce your ID. Okay, so that's the same thing with share certificates. And you know, the whole idea of renewal or duplication is to be when it's destroyed, when it's lost, or when it's just old, mutilated. Okay, so that's that. Now, the important thing with the share sat, okay? I mean, you can read about all this stuff. The important thing is that once you prove that you own shares, again, look, is what I need you to remember. When you talk about shares, it's not just shares, it's that is the company XYZ. So this company is made up of shares, and all the shares of that company add up to 100%. So it's just a question of how much of this percent do you own? Is it 0.000 something? Is it 2%? Is it 5%? Whatever, all that stuff. That is the reason why it's important that you control this. And so when somebody has that certificate, then they can prove that they own part of that company. So the certificate itself, what are the contents? What do you think are the contents of a share certificate? Like the way you just think about it. What do you think is going to be contained in a share certificate? Annette? I don't know in class, so that's for you. The other
The
lady's
name
phone
of
has
the
gone off.
company.
Okay, so there's the name of the company.
Name of
What else?
serial number.
Before you even go to those things, why do you have a share certificate? To prove what? What does it prove? Yeah. The share certificate, what does it prove? Come on.
To prove that you are the owner of that company.
You're the owner of shares.
Yeah.
Not the company, shares, okay?
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, the shares that you own. Then of course, all those things, the name, blah, 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 all that stuff. So when, so you always have to know, like, those are things that are supposed to be just there, okay? So there is the name of the company, obviously, you know, because you bought shares of which company. There's a seal, the company seal, which will be pressed against the certificate. So there is who exactly are you? Okay, your name. So your name. Now the shares themselves, how many shares do you have? What's the serial number, the date you own those shares, signatures of the people who gave you those shares or who sold those shares to you, the directors, that is. Okay, and that's important. So it is important to understand that this certificate is just trying to prove that, look, this person owns this number of shares. And so that's important. Now, the other thing that you also need to understand is the distinction. In fact, let me see. Yep, let's see, look at this question. There's that question. Can you see the question? This one is September 20. Are we on the same page?
Yeah.
Okay, so that's that. So there's this question here. The 5 circumstances under which the issuer might refuse to register transfer of shares certificate in the name of a central depository system. So you don't have to answer it. I just want you to know that question. Okay, it relates to that. So the point is, at what point, okay, will a company refuse? Because the issuer is the person who gives you the share certificate. A company will refuse to transfer share certificate, okay, from one name to another, to in a name of a central depository system. So, because if the share certificate proves that you own shares, and you want those shares to be now put under your child's name, okay? So what might make a company say, nope, you're not changing this name, okay? You're not changing the name. So it's like, but they are my shares, I want these shares to be owned by my child. And then the company says, no, we're not doing that. So what could be the possible reason why that happens? So I want you to think of that. Because we've already said fraud. If there is fraud, what else?
Forgery.
There is forgery. Any other reason?
Alteration.
If there was some exchange, alteration, okay, the name has been, changed. If this name here under the CDS probably has some violation, okay, of the rules regarding CDS, Central Depository System. So you see, these are some of the questions that you're going to get, and look, it's 10 marks. So this is not like Eastern government, you just read the notes and they're like, yeah, we're good. You need to look at it the way, from that point of view, okay, from a practical point of view. Now, let's continue. We'll come back to this paper again. So all those things. Now, the share certificate isn't the same. It's not the same as the share warrant, or the share warrant is not the same as the share certificate. And because number one, if you look at the differences, for starters, we've said the warrant says what you're entitled to. The certificate shows what you own. You understand that?
Yes.
Yeah, the warrant just says, this lady called Annette, nataka shares ngapi? They want 20,000 shares. And that is what we are going to give her. So that's it. It doesn't really say that those shares belong to you. Then you pay or whatever. Actually, usually when you get the warrant, you've already paid. So if they don't want to give you the entire shares, they'll just return some of the money to you. And then later, you're given a certificate saying, these shares are now yours, okay? And another difference, so the warrant is issued only with fully paid up shares. Well, the certificate may be issued even if you partly paid for the shares. So like, what does that mean? And look at this example here. Let's say, again, let's say we have this lady called Jen, and Jen wants to buy 100,000 shares. Okay. So Jen has paid for the shares. Now, before Jen gets the share certificate, she's going to be given a share warrant.
Yeah.
And then later certificate. Now, in this case, nothing. Everything has been paid for. But then let's look at another example. So John here has been approached. John is a rich guy, he's an investor, okay? And then there's this company called ABC. And the owner of this company is some guy called Tom. So Tom says, look, we are looking for 1 million, and we are willing to give, in exchange for this 1 million, we'll give 2 million shares in our company. And then John says, okay, how about this? I'll give you the 1 million. I just want to give you now, okay? But I guarantee I'll give you the 1 million. So for starters, I'll give you 200,000. Okay. So you see, now of these 2 million shares, John has paid for 200,000. And so he's going to get a share warrant saying he's entitled to 200,000 shares. Okay. Because you can't be given a warrant for what you've not paid for. That's one. Now, on the other hand, if this John says, look, I want all those shares under my name, but I'm paying you 200,000 now, I'll pay you the rest later. So we'll say, okay, 2 million shares under John's name. Here's a share certificate. But of these 2 million shares, 200 have been paid, which means 1.8 is unpaid. So now that, yeah, so John, these shares are under John's name, but ajalipa, which means if this company realizes that John is wasting their time, they could just have a meeting, and in that meeting, they could withdraw all the unpaid shares. So certificate just says these shares are yours, okay? But in order for us to guarantee that those shares, these are the ones that you're entitled to, then you need a warrant. So that's the reason why you can have a warrant. You can have a certificate with unpaid shares, okay? Especially if, because later we're going to do something called a call. So a call is a reminder to our shareholders to pay for their shares, okay? So it's not always, it only becomes complicated if you look at these things from the IPO point of view, because most of the time when we talk about shares, people assume you're talking about things that are in the Nairobi Securities Exchange or the stock exchange. But shares, anytime you form a company, that company is going to have shares. So the only difference between shares here and shares in private companies is that shares at the Securities Exchange can be bought by anybody in the public because those are public traded companies. While these other shares in private companies don't follow that rule. These ones are just bought by people in those private companies. Okay, question?
No.
All right. Now again, a share, okay, and a share warrant and a share certificate can be transferred, so that's a thing, okay. But the warrant will be, you can't transfer the warrant, it just has to be delivered. You can transfer the share certificate, you can't transfer a warrant, because in order for you to transfer the warrant, I mean, it's like transferring an order. A warrant is more of an order. Like if you order something, like I've ordered a new phone. So I can't transfer and say, okay, it's not me, it's him. The only thing I can change is the destination, deliver it there. Okay. But you see, with certificate, you can, what is it called? You can transfer it, okay? Because if you have your shares, so if A has shares and they want these shares to be under B's name, then you simply say transfer this share certificate to B. Change my name and put there B. So now B becomes the new owner of those shares.
Yes.
But with the warrant, what are you transferring? The shares are not yours. The only thing you can say is that, okay, hiyo warrant umepeleke pale ndaichukua hapo. That's it. Okay. So shareholders pay dividend if the company makes profit anyway. But because, they are entitled. But share warrant may not be having such. Yeah. So they may not, unless it is stated that okay, unless it's stated in the articles of association. Because if you buy shares, so the question is, when did you buy shares and how long did it take them to give you the share certificate? And when were dividends declared? And that is why we are saying it should be as quick as possible to avoid this problem of somebody owning a warrant and then not getting. Okay, look at this example. So can you imagine if a company, okay, so let's say we have these two people, John and Jen. So they both buy shares, okay? They both bought XYZ shares. Now, Jen has 1 million shares and John has 2 million shares. But Jen bought this one before John, so before. So John still has a share warrant, but Jen has a share certificate. And then the CEO decides to declare dividends. The CEO says, we are going to give 2 shillings per share as dividends. Which means Jane is going to make 2 million shares times 2. So that means Jane is making up a dividend of 2 million shillings. So they just received 2 million shillings as from bonus, or as part of the profit, not bonus, part of the profit. Now, John, okay, John on the other hand is supposed to receive 2 times 2, that's 4. And then John doesn't receive the shares because now he has a warrant instead of certificate. So you see, John can sue, can say, well, I bought these shares. It has taken so long for these people to give me a certificate. As a result of that, I've missed out on the 4 million shillings dividends. So that's the reason why it becomes a big deal. It's very important for companies to ensure that they, as fast as possible, place people and change the warrant into certificate as fast as possible. Is that clear? Is that clear?
Yes.
Right. So now again, if the certificate is stolen or forged, of course, if it is stolen, then you need to go have it cancelled and get another. If it is forged, that's a criminal issue. And so in your notes, you'll see those cases. So now let's quickly talk about CDS and then we can move on to something else and probably finish and introduce a new topic today. So the CDS, the Central Depository System. I'll keep on, anytime I say CDS, yeah. So when I say CDS, I just mean that. So the CDS. So right now, if you want to buy shares, you'll be told to open a CDS account, which is not that complicated. You just fill some forms, okay? Or, you can do that. You can just go to Nation Center, 7th floor. That's where the stock exchange is, okay? And you'll get, but most of the time you'll be required to have your broker. So if you're buying shares, you'll buy shares through an investment bank. I mean, you can go to any, and then you'll say, I want to buy shares, and then they'll tell you, do you have a CDS account? And then you'll say, no, I don't have one. And then they'll tell you, fill in these forms and blah, blah, blah. So there's that. Now, the CDS, right? The Central Depository System, this entire thing was created because the whole idea was people are not going to be dealing with shares, okay? Kienyeji, or basically analog. So the entire thing was designed so that the CMA, the Capital Markets Authority, can be in a position to control the way shares are traded. And it also can make it easy for somebody to trade securities under one account. So it's not just shares. When we talk about securities, okay, what else can you buy from a company? What else can you buy from the stock exchange other than shares? On it? Apart from shares, what else can you buy from the stock exchange? Sarah? You guys for real? Because serious. So yeah, so anyway, you can buy shares, you can buy, like, it's not just shares, you can buy shares, you can buy bonds, you can trade on futures, okay, options, and all that stuff. So when you have the Central Depository, the CDS, then it means you can do all these things under one roof. Meaning what? Meaning you can immobilize, okay, or dematerialize securities. So, people just think it's just shares. It's not just shares. I mean, look, if the government right now wants to raise money, okay, so when you say the government has floated a bond, what has happened? What are they doing? Anybody? Hello? Are you guys there?
Yes.
And you are not hearing me ask a question. Toka nijiongeleshe tu peke yangu kama mtu uko wa barabara. So what happens? Like, anyway, I can't even remember what I was asking you, so let me just go back to the notes. Can I just participate? Because it's kind of not good. I mean, right now, yeah, you have the notes, but trust me, when the exams are close, you realize that you have a lot of questions. And if you aren't asking them now, and you aren't answering them now, then you know the way they say in the church, forever hold your peace, okay? Ni peace ama ni silence. So can you guys be active? Okay. I mean, if you're going to be quiet, then don't even sign up for the class because it doesn't help. So anyway, all these securities, you can trade them in one account. That was the whole point of this. So the CDS was it was set up in 2000, and now the date doesn't matter. Now it's operational. So it's just supposed to provide all that stuff. So what exactly do these people or does this account help you with? Because again, as I said, you're not going to be trading in shares. And now, if you want, unless you're buying shares from a private company, okay? If you buy shares from a private company, then you don't need a CDS. Because it will just be you giving that company money, and then they put your name in the, they just put your name in some file they're saying you are a shareholder in that company. That's pretty much it. It's just a contract. But if you're dealing with public traded companies, then you have these. So it will facilitate immobilization of securities. And I asked you, other than shares, which are the other securities that people can trade in? So still haven't answered that question. Again, you can deposit, you can withdraw, okay, the securities. For instance, if you buy, like if you buy a 3-year bond, so you can, that is pretty much deposited in your CDS, even though you buy. The digital thing, you have it, okay? Now you want to sell to dematerialize the security, okay? The other thing that this one will do, it will be, okay, opening and whatever, that's not really, but yeah, it will do that. It will also help to facilitate transfer of book entries in securities, because if you buy shares, how will people at Safaricom know that you've bought their shares? They don't. Oh, the only thing they know, and we shall see this in the next topic, the only thing they know is that we floated 2 billion shares, and of those 2 billion shares, the value of our shares is going up, especially if they're using an issuing house. And then the issuing house will sell those shares to the public. So the report will probably go back to the company that 90% of those shares have been bought, and you can see this one through the money you have. That's it. But the small details of who owns what, those ones are going to be handled at that level. Okay. So when Safaricom, when they're just looking at their register of members, it's like, okay, we need all these investors we are dealing with, all these investment banks. Can we have those registers? And then you have the register of members. So the company itself doesn't have to worry about doing all these transfers and book entry and all that stuff. Okay. So basically all this stuff are going to be handled by the CDS. So again, as I said, you need to, if you're going to open one, then of course you need to go to your, what is it called? Your investment banker, and then they'll help you to open one. And then you can start trading in shares and things of that nature. Any question up to that bit? Any question? Guys, do you have a question?
No question.
Trying to see if I have, do I have any of these papers, the CDS here? I think I open an account. I don't know if I have one here. Ooh, you guys are not lucky. I don't seem to have. Oh, let me see, CDS. Yep, CDS forms. Okay, you guys are in luck. Let me just show you one. So practical. All right, there is. Are you able to see that? Guys?
Yes.
Yeah, so anyway, hakuna mtu atauliza kwa exam. So you want to be sitting in an exam and then you see this picture and they're like, what is this? Nope. So this is the example of the what you're talking about. So like in this case, when you are, like you want to buy shares, right? So usually you'll need to do this, okay? To have so anyway, this is the form that you'll use to apply for your CDS account. So your names and blah, 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 or basically your details and all that stuff, okay? And then they'll approve it and all that. So you can, again, yeah, I said 7th floor because that's where Suntra Investors is, but the thing is in 10th floor. So my investment, whatever, is in 7th. So this is the account, okay? That's when you talk about CDS, it's a central depository and a settlement corporation, and the entire thing is managed by the Capital Markets Authority. Right, so that's that. Now, moving on to things that are exam related. Anyway, you can read all this stuff, okay? Like its operation and all that stuff. Now, the thing that I want us to focus on is, for example, issues of suspension. Like when can they terminate your account and why? So you tell me, because you don't need to like, why do you think, okay, someone's account can be terminated? Like, because it's like a bank. Under what grounds do you think you can go to a bank, and then you told the account imefungwa? So the same thing here. Under what circumstance do you think the CDS can just be like, nope, you can't trade shares anymore. That account is no longer, we suspended it. If what happens? These things are in your notes, so I'm wondering why you're quiet. So Planta, Sarah, Annette, if what happens? Come on, chops up. We need to finish this topic and start another topic. So what could make this organization to decide to close an account? If what happens? Or suspend someone's account? Okay, so look, I would say, for example, if there's an issue of fraud, now it doesn't really make sense for me to ask a question and then answer it. So you guys, when you feel like, go to your notes and read that, okay? Because it's like you're deliberately deciding not to answer a question. Right, so that's the thing. Now, moving on to the issue of shares, okay? So let's quickly go over the issue of shares because I'm hoping that we can introduce share capital. So the issue of shares. Now, we talked about this, okay? Basically in the last class, we said when a company is looking to raise capital, then the company has their nominal capital, which is just the number of shares you have, which don't really have any you know, they're just shares in your paper. It's like when somebody say, I know my value. It's like, yeah, okay. I mean, it's whatever you think it is. But then practically, what's your value? Okay. So, you know, your practical value versus what you know is not really the same thing. So the same thing happens with companies. So at the nominal level, the company has just said, we have 1 million shares. So you're starting a company, and each share is worth 10. So the assumption you've just made is that this company is worth 10 million. Maybe it's not. Maybe it is worth more than that. So when the company is looking to raise capital, at this point, they can decide to sell 200,000 at 10 because they're aiming at raising 2 million. So in that case, they've issued the share. Of course, the process of issuing shares, we shall see that under share capital, okay, because they can do this through, and again, most of the stuff we're covering here, we're still going to look into details in share capital, but they can do this through brokers, okay? They can do this through issuing house, or they can do this through just, you know, direct sale, okay? So just sell them directly to the public, and we shall see that. So the question is, what if the company is so desperate to get money that they decide to issue their shares at a discount? These are the problems that you're going to be dealing with. Oh, and by the way, let me go back to that question. What is that question? So now you should be in a position to answer this question. There's 5 circumstances under which the issuer, in this case, think of this one as the company, okay, might refuse to register a transfer of share certificate in the name of a central depository system. In the name of a central depository system. So let's say this share certificate is held by a guy called John. So when will ABC Limited refuse to transfer this name of John to another name, maybe in the CDS, maybe in the CDS there's somebody called Jen, and they want this share to be transferred here? When will the company say, nope, we are not doing it? If what happens? It's the same question I asked and you didn't answer. It's just, like, you know, maybe they suspect fraud. Maybe that this account has been dormant for so long that the account is actually closed. Okay. Maybe this account has bad practices, like what? Like they've been doing some insider trading and things of that nature. Okay. Or insider dealing. So all that stuff supposed to know there. Now, of course, there's another one here which I'll look at. Summarize 10 rules governing declaration of dividends. By the time you're done with this one, you'll cover dividends. But in the meantime, just remember that. So let's move on. So you're talking about issuing shares at a discount. And then, where were we? Okay. So here's what I mean. Now, let's say this company is looking to raise, you said the company has, okay, let's start afresh. So we said that this company that has, let's say they have 2 million shares at 10 shillings, and they're trying to raise, so they want to sell 1 million shares, okay, so that they can raise 10 million. Now they're trying to encourage people to buy shares. But the problem is, if they offer shares at a discount, it means rather than people paying 10 per share, someone is paying 9. Okay. So the problem with this is they end up raising less money, or they end up under, it's not even under, it's more like over representing the company. They've overvalued the company because everybody else who's buying shares thinks this company is worth, okay, the 2 million times 10. So they think the company is worth 20 million. And yet some of those shares are sold at a discount, which means the company is worth less than that. So that's a problem. So the general rule is simple. We are not supposed to issue shares at a discount. But there are circumstances when we are allowed to issue shares at a discount. So those are 2 things you need to know. The first thing you need to know is that generally companies are not allowed, okay? Companies are not allowed to issue shares at a discount unless So this is where the exception comes in. Okay, so according to this section, I mean, this is just like a summary version of it. It will say companies are generally not allowed to issue shares at a discount unless, then you're told, you're given the exceptions. So unless, number one, it's a class of shares already issued, meaning now the company is going to be doing something called the rights issue. What is a rights, or sometimes we call it sequential equity offer? Rights issue or sequential equity offer, meaning the company is issuing shares in the market, and those shares are a class of shares that already existed in the market. So in that case, they can do that. Okay. Or if there was a resolution, because remember, the people own the company are the shareholders. And so if you're going to sell other shares cheaper than what we paid, you're just saying you're going to have new shareholders who own this company and they bought it cheaper than new people. So that is undervaluing the company. But if you're okay with it, like we had a resolution and that was the agreement, then you can do that, okay? And the resolution also has to specify the maximum rate of the discount, which will depend on how long the company has been in existence. So if the company has been in existence for more than a year, we assume that if they offer shares at a discount, they're in a position to recover the difference. Okay? And so these are some of the rules regarding companies offering shares at a discount. Any question? Any question? So, can a company buy back their shares? Yes or no? Can a company buy back their own shares? Okay. One person says yes. All right, guys, here's the thing. Can we take a 5 minutes break? We'll come back at 8 sharp. So 8:05, proceed with the class. We start at 7. Normally we take a break and then we continue all the way to finish this one. And when you come back, can you be active? Because this thing of sitting there, like, doesn't make sense. This is not a calculation class where you like just sit there and look at the numbers and you calculate. You need to know what's happening. Okay. So let's take a 5 minutes break and then we'll reconvene after that. So 8:05, 8:06. So the question was regarding company sharing, okay, rather buying back their shares. So this is the thing of redeemable. And again, it's important to understand that when talking about shares, we say we have the preferential shares and you have the ordinary shares. So with redeemable shares, okay, you're talking about preference shares. Okay, so these are not ordinary shares, these are preferential shares. These are the kind of shares that companies can buy back. Otherwise, companies are not generally allowed to buy back their shares because that can allow for market manipulation. Now, look at this. The reason why companies would like to do that is usually just comes down to either controlling the market or controlling the company's position. Like generally, in economics, supply demand, right? As a seller, okay, and the buyer, or too much put this way, the quantity bought versus the cost bought. So the seller, okay, the supply side of things, the seller is always motivated to sell things. The seller would rather sell at this point. They'd rather sell a lot at a very high price, okay, and then they hope that people buy a lot of those things. That is what motivates them. Now the buyer just does the opposite. The buyer thinks, I want to buy a lot of these things at a very low price. So usually this is what the market is. So when it comes to shares, the same rule will still apply. You can only buy shares that are available in the market. Okay? You only buy shares that are available in the market. Meaning what? Meaning if a company, let's say Safaricom, okay, you want to buy Safaricom shares. So then the question is, are there Safaricom shares in the market? Because if there are no Safaricom shares in the market, then you're not going to buy anything. You only buy whatever is available. So the problem is that when people are buying shares, like we are buying, what you are doing is we are giving the company money. So it means the value of the shares will go up. Okay? If you're giving the company money, the value of the shares go up. Why? Because what exactly is happening when you buy shares is that you're getting part of the company, and the company is taking actual money from you. Okay? So the company is taking real money from you. In exchange, they're giving you part of the company. So the value of the company is going up. But then when you decide to sell the shares, what are you doing? You're taking your money out of the company. So the value of the company is going down. Because otherwise shares is just some piece of paper. It's nothing really. It's like when somebody has a lot of phones, someone is selling phones. So they have stock, okay? And there's a value attached to that stock. Say, all these phones that are here are worth 2 million. Okay, but do you really have the 2 million? No. It only becomes 2 million if people actually pay the price. Now you can imagine if people buy these phones, so the company has 2 million. And then tomorrow people are like, these ones are defective. And then they start having return inwards. It's like, chukua simu yako, give us our money. What is happening to the value of the company? It's going down. So the same thing happens in the market. So to avoid this problem, sometimes when the company notices that there's a free fall in the market, then they'd rather buy back the shares so they hold, they prevent further bloodshed, they prevent further loss. It's like the supplier who realizes that, okay, right now the price of sugar is, I don't know, how much does sugar go for? 1 kg of sugar, how much? How much is a kg of sugar? How much?
200.
200. Okay, I don't know. I mean, that's how useless I am, right? I don't even know what a kg of sugar goes for. So so the kg, let's say somebody, Sarah, I think you're static, your network. Can you say what you said again? I didn't hear you. Sarah, come again. Hello, Sarah, can you hear me? Yeah, I think your network, I don't know. Or whatever you said, I don't know if it was a question or anything. I couldn't hear you because of the static. Anyway, so the sugar thing, right? You've said the price kg is 200, right? So imagine a seller who thinks, okay, that this thing is going to go to like 250 in 3 weeks' time. So are they going to clear what they have? Because if it is going to 250, sorry, not 350, then that means the price of buying it is also going to go high. So this seller can decide to hold on, okay, to the stock so that they can sell at this price and make more money. So the same thing, the company can buy back their shares so they can hold on to those shares and then they can sell them expensive later. Okay, so that's the motivation behind buying back the shares. But then if you look at that the way it is, then you realize that is market manipulation. So the company is actually manipulating the market. And so we don't want that to happen. And so to solve this problem, there are rules, okay, regarding whether companies can buy back their shares. And the first rule is if you're going to buy back your shares, then they have to be redeemable. because if they aren't redeemable, then no. Also, anyway, we'll see more of these ones when we start talking about share capital. For now, just think of it this way: they're redeemable, and the amount of money you're paying should be from the share premium account. Okay, so we don't want you to spend actual money from the business to buy back shares, because this is not a business operation. Okay. So any question up to there? So remember, buying back the shares as well as issues regarding shares for discount, we will still cover them in share capital. We are talking about rules preventing money from going out of the company, or the rules that are put in place to prevent capital from being watered down. So now regarding the share allotment. So here's the thing: when you buy shares, okay, what actually happens when you buy shares? Now, when you place an order for shares, so you're making an offer to the company. Now, the company doesn't have to sell the shares, all the shares to you, because you're not the only person who has ordered for that share. So there are a lot of you. So the company look at that list. Okay, the company, the whatever, if it is the brokers, whatever it is, but usually it's the direction of the companies. And then they will allot. Okay, they'll say A gets X number of shares, B gets, whatever, C gets whatever. So these allotment. Why are they doing this? Because either one, those shares have been oversubscribed. Many people bought the shares. So we have more money than we have shares. When you say shares have been oversubscribed, it means, because when people are making offers, you're filling a form and you're attaching money, a check, or you're depositing money with that form to buy the shares. So if you have a lot of money and less shares, then you see those shares have been oversubscribed. Okay, so when the shares have been oversubscribed, that becomes an issue. So we have to give the money back. Now, that is the reason why we do allotment, so that everybody gets what they can get, and the people who can't get anything, bad luck. So that's appropriation, okay? So the rules are simple. When we are doing this allotment, we can do it either one, at the time of application, okay? So we do that at the time of application. We decide who gets what and who gets what. And then once we've already, let's say you wanted 10,000 shares, but as a result of the allotment, you've been given 7,000. So the choice is pay for the 7,000. Actually, at this point, that's you've already taken your money. We'll just give you back the remaining amount of money. If you don't like, you can sell the shares. So like Safaricom, when they were doing the IPO, they were oversubscribed. This is what happened. And that results into a contract. So the contract is, remember, you made an offer. We accepted your offer, and you've already paid, and we've given you the shares. So there's a contract, okay? Now, regarding conditional offers, this will depend on the application. So a company can say, in fact, all companies do have this. Like with Safaricom, the rule was you can buy, I think minimum was it 1,000? I think. I can't remember now. But minimum, the condition can be, these are the minimum number of shares you can buy. The general rule in stock exchange, if you're dealing with public companies, the minimum number of shares you can buy is 100. But see, those are public traded companies. In case of a private company, then the directors of those companies are the ones who are going to set the rules. So if you have your company, okay, and you're trying to raise money through selling shares, first of all, you won't sell that to the public because it's a private company. So you're approaching different venture capitalists, you're approaching different financial institutions, so you're approaching different individuals to buy your shares. So it will depend, what are your conditions, okay, so that you can accept that. The other thing is that this transfer or this thing can only be done by a proper authority, because the people who, there's this thing called prospectus. So a prospectus is a document that you give somebody, or that is designed to entice someone to buy your shares. Okay? So you are giving someone that document because you want them to read it. It could be a document, it could be a video, whatever it is. So the people whose name appear in the prospectus are going to be liable if it turns out that that prospectus was false. So if you lie in a contract, because you can lie, I mean, look at this example here. Okay, let's say you are dealing in what company? Now, which company can we use as an example? Okay, right now everybody's trying to say we are going green. And so you want to start an EV, electric vehicle company in Kenya. So you already have a prototype car. Okay, like there's one that you produce and it's beautiful. But then this entire thing is subject to approval from the transport, okay, Ministry of Transport and whatever, or the board of transport, right? So you raise capital, you sell your shares. And so these people are buying shares in this EV company, hoping that this is going to be a big deal. But then the transport board decides to reject. They decide to reject your deal, okay? Your car company deal. So in this case, the people who bought your shares can easily say, you lied to us. But the truth is, you didn't lie, okay? You just hope that the transport board is going to approve this. So this is the reason why whenever you are offering shares, it will always come down to who did it. Was it a proper authority? Okay, and then was it done within a reasonable time? And anybody who applies using a fictitious name, a fake name, then this is going to attract some criminal liability because it's the same as fraud. Okay. All right. Any question up to that part? Because I feel like talking slowly. Any
No
question?
question, Martin.
All right. So now, the same anyway. When talking about transfer of these things, just the same. With the shares, debentures, the rules are the same. Okay. Well, the rules aren't the same, but the mechanism is the same. They are movable assets. So it's one name for another. And now, as you're doing that, as you're transferring, let's say, just clear this. So as you're transferring that, let's say this guy called John wishes that this other person called Jen to have the shares. So they're being transferred from John to Jen. Now, this is going to result into some sort of a contract. And that is a contract of transfer. Okay. Remember, transfer of shares and allotment of shares is not the same thing. When you're talking about allotment, we're talking about a situation where you actually bought the shares. Transfer just means those shares were mine and now they're yours. Okay, either because it's a gift or because I'm dead. I mean, could be, or I'm just the one. Okay. So regarding these, the first thing is that the transferee, okay, you're going to pay a price. Okay, so you either buy, because that's one thing. The transfer can be as a result of a purchase. That's what you're assuming. I mean, if it's a gift, then there's nothing. It's just exchange of name. But in this case, we're assuming you've bought them from another person, because that is very much possible. Okay, you see, in a company, somebody can say, I have 15% shares in that company. And then they say, I'd like to buy those shares from you. And then we get into a contract of transfer that you expect the directors to approve. But the directors can reject that contract, especially if they think that this person number 2, to whom the shares are being transferred, has other motives. Okay, is either thinking in terms of hostile takeover, something like that. But assuming all those factors are constant, then they buy the shares. Number two, okay, there's going to be obviously transfer of certificates, and there's going to be exchange of name in the register of members, which we talked about, okay? And anyway, if there is a delay or there is anything, of course, that is going to arise into other legal problems. So we shouldn't be delaying in transferring or changing the names of people in the register of members. In fact, look at this question. Now that we talked about that, look at this one. So you have a minute, quickly read that and then tell me what you think. Is it visible enough or should I increase the size?
It's visible.
Yeah. So what do you think? This is actually from topic 3. So it's not even topic 4, membership. So the first part, the second part, which one? Which one are you guys going to answer? Come on, guys. Yeah, go back and read topic 3. Then when you feel like answering, you'll answer that. So now, regarding the transfer, okay, we pointed out that there is a restriction. I did say that it's not always automatic. I want you to understand that it's not always automatic that if you buy shares, then they must transfer them to you. As I said, the more shares you give, the less of that company you can retain. Also, okay, look at this. So you see, that is the company. Now, the more shares you give, the less of this company you are in control of. Now, there are scenarios where, let's say, somebody buys shares in a company. We call them the corporate raiders. So raiders, these guys, they buy shares in a company enough to give them control of the company, but they're not interested in running the company. You see, when it comes to making money, there are different ways to look at it. Some people start a business, they work on that business, and then for a very long time, and then they hope things go according to plan. Now, other people want to make money quickly and move on to the next thing. So somebody buys a company, they buy shares in a company, and then they look at the company's assets. And then they realize the company's assets are more valuable. And so what they decide to do is they just decide to sell the company's assets. So they have a vote in which they wind up the company, dispose of the assets, make their money quickly, and then move on. So everybody else is fired and the company is shut down. Now, usually or another one, you find someone who wants to, basically they want that company to be part of another company which they own. So they vote for a merge, okay, a merger or a takeover. So people get into companies or people buy companies for different reasons. And so because of this, some of these reasons don't really encourage the going concern of the company. And so that means the directors, the board of directors, may restrict the issue of transferability. They might say, no, that purchase of those shares not going through. The board has rejected your purchase, especially in private companies. So you made a bid, okay? You gave a bid, proposed a bid to acquire the shares, and then the board says, nope, we are not doing it, okay? Or in some cases, the board might actually force you to buy those companies. Like the way Elon Musk was like, nah, I'm no longer interested in buying Twitter. They're like, no, you have to buy it. You gave us your bid. So that's a reverse. So now regarding the restriction, so one, it can just be power of the directors. You know, when I say the board, I mean the directors, the board of directors. They might just decide we are not selling the shares to you. Okay, why? Because you think, you know, it's what's best for the company. And at least in this case, they've told you, you know, they're not selling the shares to you because they think that's best for what's best for the company. In some cases, they don't even have, okay, to give you the ground. They just say no, and then that's it. Like, why no? We don't have to tell you why. You're not selling them to you. That's it. Okay. And of course, they have to do this within a reasonable time. So that's important. Now, that is actually the end of trading with shares from a board point of view. Now, let's look at mortgage of shares. Now, before you look at mortgage of shares, is there any question? Yeah, I don't know if, anyway. So when talk about mortgage of shares, when somebody says mortgage, okay, what comes to your mind when you're talking about mortgage? Anyone? When you talk about mortgage, what comes to your mind?
A loan.
Okay, a loan. Okay. Anyway, so there's the issue of security. So mortgage is basically just security. Like when somebody says, I've bought a house through a mortgage, you haven't bought a house through a mortgage. You bought you just been paying for a loan while you're living in that house. So here's the thing, there's a bank and there is a company that builds houses. So let's call them constructors. So these guys have this house. You know, this just goes to tell you how people don't understand. Most people are just idiots. That's just it. And it makes sense because that way the world can continue. Because if a lot of people are actually smart, if let's say if 90% of the people in the world had an IQ of above 150, there'll be very few people on the earth. Okay? No, not even 100, let's say 180. Because the smarter you are, like properly smart, mostly the less kids you have, because you don't see the point. But it's okay. I mean, we need these people. So usually is what happens. There is this company, let's call it ABC, and they've built a house. So let's say this is a 4-bedroom house. Okay. So it's a 4-bedroom house. And the market value for this house is, well, it depends on where the house is. So let's assume it's somewhere in Westlands. And so the market probably, it's an apartment. So it's not a standalone house. So let's give it 16 million. Actually, that's a lot. So 13 million. Okay. That's the value. You should buy direct here. But then there's the bank. So we have this guy called John, who's married to this person called Jen. And then Jen is like, we need to own our own house. Talipa rent mpaka siku gani? When the truth is Jen is the one who's been paying it. But that's pretty much how it is, okay? So the woman usually complains and then the man decides to do some stupid thing. So this guy goes to the bank and says, I'd like to buy a 4-bedroom house. And the bank says, all right, the ones that we have right now, you can buy it right now and pay 20 million. Do you have 20 million? It's like, no. I remember it's 13. But in exchange, you can pay the cheapest mortgage usually is something between 35 to 50, 50 per month, 50K. That's the cheapest I've seen. I mean, the ones that go above that. So they say, you can pay, let's go with the cheapest. You can pay 35,000 per month times 12 times, I don't know how many years it will take you, maybe 20 years or something, whatever. So, and then you realize, okay, yeah, I can do this. Then you realize you've actually ended up paying a lot more. Okay. So now what you are doing, you are living in this house. Okay. And the bank bought that house from these people. Okay, so the bank bought the house from these people. So now the bank allows you to live in this house, even though they own the house. And then you're paying the bank 50,000 every month, hoping that one day when you finish paying, you own this house. Okay, so here's the catch. Here's why I said most people are stupid. So when somebody looks at this transaction, they think the bank is selling the house. The bank is not in the business of selling houses. The bank is in the business of finance. They are interested in this deal. This is how they make money. It is the same with those phones for Kina M's, GM, Copper, and those sort of, or even cars. When you buy a car through financing, this is the business. The financing is the business. It's not. They're not selling cars. They're not selling phones. They are selling debt. Okay, and so when you pay, that interest that's what they're interested in. So now, taking that knowledge and now applying shares. So in this case, it means you want money, but you don't have security. So what do? You put up your shares as security, and then you get the money, or in this case, as Clinton did put it, the loan. Okay? So your shares, when you say you've mortgaged your shares, it means you've put up your shares as collateral against a given loan. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Okay. So you're putting up your shares against that particular loan. So there are two things that are going to happen here. One, it could be what is known as a legal mortgage, where you actually transfer the ownership. You transfer the ownership of that share or of those shares. You transfer the ownership to maybe let's say to the bank. Okay, but it's not theirs per se. You're just saying, look, if I fail to pay this loan, then the bank gets to keep the shares. So you've transferred the ownership. So that is a legal mortgage. Now, equitable mortgage, just saying, look, I own these shares, is what they are. And I can't, they're still under my name. I can't trade with them. I can't do anything with them because you have this agreement. Give me this loan. Now, if I fail to pay this loan, then you can come here and then you can take the shares. So most banks will prefer legal instead of equitable, because with the equitable, yes, you get a blank sort of statement which says, this person A should never trade with these shares. Yeah, but the shares are still under their name. But with a legal mortgage, it's like a conditional sale, in sale of goods, a conditional sale where I sell these things to you, but the ownership doesn't entirely goes to you until I fail to meet that condition, which in this case is until I fail to pay your money, then the ownership completely goes to that particular person. So that is mortgage. So you need to understand that. You need to know that, yes, you can mortgage your shares. but there are going to be some issues. Okay, for example, if two people, okay, let's say there's this guy called John again, who bought share, who has shares in XYZ, and XYZ is a car manufacturing company. Okay, so John has shares there. Well, it doesn't really matter what this company does, so this is irrelevant. So John goes and takes a loan in the bank. At the same time, John took a loan in this company. So John has two loans. So this loan, he took a loan in the bank, and also took a loan from the company. And now John has put up his shares. So don't have straight mortgage, just put up his shares as collateral. So there's lien on those shares, like they can hold. So the question is, who's going to hold on to these shares? Is it the bank or is it the company? And the answer to this one usually will depend on the date. When was the loan taken? So whichever place John took that loan first, that's the person that has the right to those shares. Number two, what type of loan is it? If it is a legal loan, a legal mortgage, then definitely whichever place he took first will get the priority. So these are the sort of questions that are going to be asked when it comes to mortgaging of shares. It's this person took a loan here, they did put up their shares as collateral, and now they've defaulted, advise this person. And that is the reason why I keep on saying you have to participate. If you just sit there staring at your screen thinking, yeah, you'll get to an exam and you want to know the difference between shares as a topic and share capital as a topic. They'll all look the same to you, and yet they're not. So moving on, we'll just finish this and then start the new topic. So finally, when companies are raising capital, they do this. Yeah.
I have a question
Okay.
on the difference between transfer and transmission of shares.
Okay.
What's the difference? Because I think transmission is still transfer.
Well, it depends. It depends on the context, but mostly transfer is just from one person to the other. Okay. So it's not really that different unless you buy one. So if you bought the shares, then yeah. Although it depends. If you say transmission, and then you say allotment, that is when it becomes a problem. But generally speaking, transfer is from one person to the other, and transmission, you just bought them, they're yours. That's it. So it depends on how they're used. But again, it's a context thing. So
Okay.
like you notice I used allotment instead of when you're talking, I said allotment of shares instead of saying buying shares. Because when you see the word allotment, it means the shares are bought. But when you see transfer means from me to you, but not necessarily from the company to you. Okay, that is where transmission comes in, the allotment. If the shares come from the company, it means you bought from the company. If they come from me, it could be either you bought from me or I've just given them to you. But either way, the board have to be involved. Any other question? So I was saying a call is, again, I'll repeat this. I said a call is a reminder. When you see call in company law, this is just a reminder to our shareholders. What are we reminding them of? To pay for the shares that are under their name that they've not paid for. Okay? You ordered these shares, you haven't paid for them. Kindly do pay. That is a transfer. That is a call, rather. So a call can be on application. You see, when you are ordering, you want to buy shares today, then there's an amount you're going to pay. Either you're going to pay full, or you can say pay 50%. But mostly they say pay full. Now, on allotment, you already applied. And then, okay, let me clear this one. So let's say you apply for 100,000 shares and you've written a check, full payment for these shares on application. Then that's okay. That means a call on application is paid. But what if many other people, like you only have 1 million shares, and yet we have more than maybe 2 million people have applied for those shares and they've all deposited money? Then it means you're going to have to do allotment. Meaning what? What did you say? If the shares have been oversubscribed, what do we do? Sarah in Clinton, what do you do? If you're selling something and you have the customers are many, many customers have bought those things, so you have more money from customers and you have less goods, what do you do? Guys, you're giving me a headache, man. It's like, seriously. What do you do? You've received a lot of money from customers. Let's say you're selling shoes online, okay? And the rule is lipa and M-Pesa, and then you deliver. And you have a good reputation, so people don't doubt you. And now you only have 10 pair of shoes going for, I don't know, 2,500 per pair, which means maximum you can make is 25,000. But now you have 50,000, meaning more than, so double the price. So what do you do with this extra 2,000, another 25,000? Do you keep it or do you return it to the customers? Hello? Are we on the same page here? Guys, I need to know if we're on the same page because I'm finishing shares and now you're talking about calls and I'm asking if the shares are oversubscribed, what do you do? Okay, look, I don't know. I think that's the last attempt. So you don't want to participate, cool. So anyway, you do that, calls on allotment. And again, you can have first and second, and then there's the final call. So usually 4 calls, 25% gives you 100, or you can just have one where you say pay 100% and you're done. So like with most ordinary shares bought on stock exchange, that's what happens. But with private companies during the negotiation, then sometimes the company doesn't want a lot of money. So they just want enough money and then they'll remind you to pay the rest later. Also going forward, look, if you guys are not planning to participate in class, just don't attend class. Just come kupitisha video because it's pointless if I'm asking a question you will not answer. Now, the types of calls, okay, are going to be call in advance, which means we are telling you pay before, okay, you get the shares or fully pay for that. Now, call in arrears, it's like, okay, we negotiated and we took maybe 50% of the money. Yet you have, maybe you ordered 10,000 shares. You've only paid for half of these shares of 5,000. The 10,000 are still yours. But then at a later time, we'll say, okay, here's a reminder. Can you pay for the remaining 5 because we need to do some project? Or when the company is about to wind up. So it's like everybody who owed the company money, you have a legal obligation to pay. So that is called in the event of winding up. So advance arrears and winding up. And finally, so there is this question here. It's not really a question. Let me see, was there? Let me see, before we look at this, was it a question? Yep, there's this question here, which is what you're answering there. We are told summarize 10 rules. Okay, so that question. That's the question. This is it is what the rest are just things, but this is actually the question. The rules governing payment of dividends. And that's this one. So when it comes to, well, it isn't that one. I'm just saying that's the last thing that we need to look at and then we finish. So when it comes to, I mean, when it comes to here, forfeiture of shares, okay? So think about the dividends because we're going to look at it in the next thing, the share capital. When it comes to forfeiture of shares, like you want nothing to do with the shares. So you can say, look, I own these shares in a company and I don't want to. So they say, can you sell them? It's like, I don't want to sell them because no one is going to buy them. So can you just take them back? So that's forfeiture. And also, the company can also say, and we shall see this in the next topic, they can say, we are worth 1 million, but out of this 1 million, only 700,000 are paid shares, 300,000 are unpaid. So we are overvalued. The actual value is this. So what do we do with this? It's like, let's get rid of them. Okay, let's just tell these people, these shares don't exist. Okay, so there's going to be a notice. Okay, this is just like an agenda for the meeting. Okay, there's going to be a meeting. Okay, which means there's going to be a resolution to get rid of these. What's the reason for that? Because you're overvalued and maybe you want to sell the company, or maybe you want to merge the company, or maybe we are cutting back on cost. So then there's going to be a vote, people vote. And if that passes, good. If it doesn't pass, well, too bad. But once it has passed, we get rid of this, and the new value of the company becomes 700,000. Now, what you've just explained here, don't worry about it if you don't get it, because it's going to be part of alteration of capital, which you're just about to look at. Now, regarding dividends, okay? So again, we'll look at that. But the first rule of dividends is that you're going to have to pay dividends through. Okay, first of all, when I say dividends, what am I talking about? What is dividend? Because you're supposed to pay them in cash. What exactly do you mean by dividends? Hmm? Okay. What you guys? Yenu sasa.
So dividends are payments. Dividends are payments made to the shareholders by the company as a distribution of profit.
So that's the first rule. The company must have made profit. If there is no profit, there's no dividends. All right. So that's the thing. And the other thing is that they have to be in cash, because you can't tell people that you're not going to give you money, but we are going to give you more shares. So that's another thing. It has to be in cash. It comes from profit, which means depending on the shares you have, it's not a must for companies to pay dividends. It's another rule. Anyway, so the rules regarding dividends, just remember that question and be in a position to answer it. So that's the end of this topic, first of all. That's the end of the topic called shares. So now, the way I keep on asking you any question, and you're not answering. When you get bored and then you start posting questions for WhatsApp group at TCVD, I'm not going to answer those ones because you want a chance to ask. I asked, you guys were like, Mrs. Jibu, si mtu mwingine atauliza. Because right now you can't tell me that you are in traffic. Well, unless you're in traffic, in which case, good luck. But so we're just deliberately deciding not to talk. Anyway, now the next topic is share capital. Notice, is topic 5. That other topic was shares. This is share capital. There's a difference. So all in all, what you are simply doing, we are in part 2 of company law, which is financing the company. Part 1 was setting up the company. So under this topic of financing the company, or under this section of financing the company, we have shares as a topic, which you've talked about. And then we have share capital. And then we have debt capital. So that's done. So now we are here. Okay. Capital. So under share capital, of the many things you need to know, first of all, you need to know, 1, the various types of share capital. Number 2, the various ways in which you can raise share capital. Number 3, what if you decide to go with the prospectus? What are the rules? And the rules as well as the obligations or the legal liabilities under prospectus. And then there is alteration, maintenance, and reduction of capital, which, for example, what we've just talked about there, where you reduce unpaid. Okay. There is the question of, can a company buy back its own shares? We've already answered that. Okay. Also the question of, what is it called? Discount. It's also going to be covered there. And then, can we give a company, rather, can a company give you a loan that you buy back its own shares? Like if John, I usually don't bother coming up with names. It's always John, Jen, whatever. So if John works for XYZ, can XYZ give John a loan? And then John takes this loan and buys shares of XYZ. That kind of a thing. And then, of course, there's the issue with dividends. So that's the thing. Those are the things you're going to cover here. And usually I'll say, is there any issue? And I know you want to talk, so let me just skip that part. So assume I've asked that question. Now, there is share versus share capital. What is the difference between these? Apart from this. So that's the first difference. This one has capital, this one doesn't have. So shares, that's just an interest, okay, in a company. The smallest unit of interest in a company. Quantified in monetary form. That's it. Like 1 share, 10 shillings, 1 share, 5 shillings. But share capital is the money. So this is what we're talking about. This is the money you raise after selling shares. Okay. So ignoring the bad handwriting, if a company has put 1 million shares in the market, so the question is, what is the value of these shares? And then you say 1 share goes for 10 shillings. So that means the company is looking for to raise a share capital of 10 million. So I'll repeat that. Share capital is the money you get from selling shares. Is that okay? Annette?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So the money
Yes.
you get from selling shares. So you're no longer talking about shares anymore. We are done with shares. Now you're talking about the money you get from selling shares. So this topic, the entire thing is going to revolve around money associated with the shares you've sold. That former topic was just based on rules regarding shares and shares related activities. Okay, I don't even understand why it's, it should be a very short topic. So, but whatever. So this one is like, so the money we get from raising shares. So the question is, what kind of money can we get? What are the various ways in which you can raise that money? What are the liabilities when you're trying to raise money by selling shares and then dividends? Okay, so things of that nature. So the first thing we start with is by looking at the various types of share capital. Now notice, there's a difference between types of shares and types of share capital. When you talk about shares, what did you say? Which are the various types of shares? Not types of share capital. Hiyo nishaandika ndio iko hapo. Types of shares ni gani na gani?
Preference shares.
Ordinary shares.
So preference and ordinary. Indeed, those are types of shares. Okay, preference. Although there is also deferred, which we don't talk about because your syllabus is not even asking for it. But we have deferred shares. So now types of share capital, we have nominal, issued, called, paid, blah blah blah. Now, why am I saying blah blah blah? Because let's just make it practical. I've come to realize that when you guys just look at these things and then any question you're like, so let's look at this practical. A company, so that you understand all those types. A company, let's call it XYZ. And how many, what is the value of the, oh, let's say this company has been registered. So you guys just give me the numbers. At this point, I'm also tired of thinking, just want to talk. So let's assume we've registered this company. How many shares do we have? Do we write Icona shares? Come on, Gapi. You're just starting the company. So whichever number you want to put there. So in the memorandum of association, so we write this company has how many shares? Sarah?
$500,000.
Okay, let's go with that one. So they have 500,000 shares. I thought you were going to say like 5 million. 500,000 dog, but it's okay. That's your number. So they have 500,000 shares. And each share goes for how much? Say 10. I usually just say 10 because it's easier to do the math. Otherwise, you can just say 15 and then at some point, you know, 15 times 75. Yeah, like, hang on. Ingeandika to 10. So 10 is easy, right? So 10 shillings each. So the assumption you're making is that this company is valued at how much? At 5 million. The truth is, they don't have this money. It's just a company, just a bunch of two people who started a company. So what we have here, so number one, guys, pay attention. This is what we call the nominal capital. I need you to follow along keenly because everything in this topic is just practical. It's just that bang, 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 done. So that is nominal capital. Okay. Are we together, Sarah and Clinton?
Yes.
So you don't have this money. This is just the shares that you said you have, the value that you have. That's the nominal capital. What's the nominal capital in this case? 5 million, which doesn't exist. Okay. So now we need to raise capital. So what do? We need to issue some of these shares so that people can give us actual money. So issued capital. So we decide, look, why don't we sell some of these shares? Okay, how many of these shares are we going to sell? And then we decided we are going to sell 100,000. So it means how many are we left with? We are left with 400,000. So we've issued capital. So there is nominal, which we wrote for book in the book. And then there is the issued capital, which is 100,000. Okay. So we have that. It's 100,000 that we've issued. So of this issued capital, some are going to be bought, some are not. Some are going to be paid, some are not. So let's say paid. Okay. Of the ones that have been paid, 75,000 of those shares have been paid. So you can just multiply by 10 so that you know the actual amount of money, 75,000. So that becomes paid up capital. This is the money that we have. Remember, this is what we gave to the market. And then this is the capital. So in reality, in account, we have 750,000 shillings. So these are capital that we actually have based on what we issued. Not based on what we said the company is worth. This is the money. Now we have this money, we can do something with it. But then that means we have unpaid. Unpaid, how many is unpaid? How much? The unpaid.
25.
So here we have 25,000.
25,000.
Okay, so that means there is money that is there. So if these shares were taken up by people, it means there are people who have our shares, but they've not paid. So we do a call. What did we say a call was? Remember we talked about a call? The shares. Yeah. So we say that call.
Reminding the shareholders to pay.
Okay, so that's that reminder, right? So you're reminding them, hey, you guys, you know you owe us money, right? Yep. Of that money that you owe us, we want 15,000 value of the shares. So called up capital, we do 15,000 because we're just looking for 150K. That means we still have uncalled up, is the difference, this one minus that one. So we still have 10,000 in uncalled up capital. So that's just how you look at shares, okay? Share capital rather. So there is what we had in the book. Go ahead.
So the called up capital is from the unpaid.
Yeah, called up is always from the unpaid because you're reminding people to pay. That is the call. Okay.
Okay. So whatever people have paid
Mhm.
or have understood.
That's
Okay.
paid up. That is paid up capital, okay? So that is the reason why I didn't want to go through the PowerPoint because it's just going to be like a history lesson where you say, you know, there was agriculture in Mesopotamia, and then somebody asks you, where is Mesopotamia? And like, where andika hivyo imeandikwa. So, like, guys talk about Babylon, and then if you ask them, where's Babylon? Because it has to be somewhere in the earth. They don't know it's Iraq, okay? They're like, it's in Iraq. Or when somebody says, you know, like, what was the name of Tunisia in history? Go find out. When they're talking about Carthage and CG, what? You know that, like, you guys did history, so like Carthage and CG, Macedonia and whatever, it's like Tunisia. So anyway, look, so to avoid all those theories, there is what you started a company. Let me just change this to red. Probably going to be, nah, that is boring, maroon. So this is what you started the company with. You don't have money. This is just a number that Sarah said, let's put that number there. So yes, we registered the company and then we just put the number there. So now we are raising capital. And so we've said, okay, of these shares we have, and then we you know, people don't just buy your shares. They really need to have faith or hope with your company. And so you've given them a good enough reason to trust our company. They're like, yeah, these guys look like if they know what they're talking about. Do they? Yes. So now they've issued 100,000 shares. And then people have bought. First of all, people have just taken all the shares, but they've just paid for 750, which means there is 25,000 that is unpaid. And then we've reminded them to pay for 15. And then there is still this one that we can remind them later. Okay. So that's the capital. Those are the various types of capital. So you see the way it now makes sense. There is the nominal or authorized. This one is when you're registering the company. Then there is what you offer to the market. Okay. There is what was paid for. There is what wasn't paid for, which you remind people to pay. There is what hasn't been paid for, and you haven't bothered to remind people. And then there is the reserve share capital, which you just hold on to. It's like, nah, this one you're not selling them. These are like our backup. Yeah. We just sell them if push comes to shove. If things are so bad, so it's like, yeah, let's just sell the last part of the capital. Okay. All right. Questions? Any question?
No question.
What? Glanta, you good? Or you don't even know what to ask. It's like, it means the layout as junior listening is us. Is that the scenario here? So another question is regarding these all raising capital things. So how do we go about it? Now, for starters, you have to understand that, okay, let me ask you this. Why would you buy are company shares. Okay, what would make you to buy shares of any company? Don't worry about whatever the slide says. Let's answer that question and then we'll see why am I asking that question. So what possible reason would you have for buying shares in a company?
To be a shareholder.
Okay, one, you probably want to be a shareholder. But what would motivate you from the company's point of view? Not now.
Dividend.
So maybe because you think the company offers good dividends, that's number one. Any other reason? Or maybe the company has a good brand, or maybe the company looks like if they're going somewhere, or maybe you just have money and you don't know what to do with it. So that's never really the reason. But all that stuff, right? So now, when the company wants to sell their shares, okay, we are saying the company is selling their shares, but in reality, the company is doing what? Is raising capital. Sasa, companies don't sell shares, companies raise capital. But selling shares looks like a good enough reason to, because again, people love simplified things. That makes them feel nice. Okay. And it's just like it's the same way you get a security guard who says, well, mimi naitwa soldier. Like, yeah, okay, we can just call you watchman, but it doesn't sound nice. Okay. Or as teachers, like, that's a teacher, I am a lecturer. It's like, nah, you guys are doing the same thing. But anyway. So companies raising capital. So the question is, how do they raise capital? Okay, how? So the first question will be, is that company in the stock exchange or not? So if the company is not listed in the stock exchange, in this case, you're going to be raising shares to the public, okay? Then it means they are going to do what is known as initial public offer, IPO. So when you see IPO, when you see IPO, when you see this phrase IPO, we are simply talking about initial public offer, meaning they're offering their shares to the public for the first time. Okay, so that means the company has been operational. It's been operational now. To the people around that company, that could be an exit strategy. They just say, look, why don't you just take this company public and then that's how I make my money. Here's what I'm saying. Okay, so these are things you're not taught in school. These are things you learn on your own. Okay, when you have your company, you understand that the company life cycle goes that way. Okay? So there's the intro, there is the growth, there's the maturity, and then there's the decline. All things just work this way. I'm a human being. You're born full of life. Everybody likes you. Everybody's like, that's a cute baby. Oh, that's an ugly baby, but we don't say it. It's cute baby. And then you start growing, and then everybody's like giving you opportunities, chances. I want internship, I want this, I want this. Yeah, shika. And then maturity. And then when you ask for something like, when you're mkubwa, you're still asking for things. Okay, now you can just die. So the same thing happens with companies. Now, if we hit this spot here, so the people started the company can say, rather than dying with this company, let's just do an IPO, which is also known as let's sell the company. Okay. So then other shareholders come in, they buy shares, the value of shares go up. And then as a founder, you can sell your shares and then go away. But that's not the point of this class. The point is, at this point, we are taking the company public, or another word is, we are floating the company, okay? Flotation. So remember that. So we said, for the first time, it's IPO, or we can say floating the company, but the keyword is IPO. This one is just an American word. So IPO. That is for the first time. Now, for the second time, if the company is already in the market, like Safaricom, Equity, KCB, Kenya Power, all those companies that already exist in the stock exchange, when they are trying to raise capital for the other time. Now, you want to understand that, let's come back here. You see here, we said issued capital, okay? And in our example, our company was 500,000, right? Remember that. And then how many did we issue? How many shares did we issue?
100,000.
So those are 100, right? So these, let's assume this was our IPO, which means we still have 400 worth of shares that we can sell. So when we sell, we inject more shares for the second time. We do another 100. So you see this one, this is IPO, this is not IPO. Okay, it means we already exist in the market. That is assuming it's a public company. If it is not a public company, then it means you're just selling our shares privately. So this is what we call rights issue. Okay, let me go back to the slide. That makes sense. So the company already exists in the market. So what you're going to be doing, you're going to be doing what is called a rights issue, or a sequential sequence, or second, number 2, a sequential equity offer. Remember, shares are just equity. Sequential equity offer. It means we are offering our shares to the public for the second time. And here's where it gets interesting. Now, there is a thing called the preemption, okay, or preemptive rights. See, the shareholders already existed here. When you're offering shares to the public, to the market for the second time, then if in the Articles of Association they have preemptive rights, then that means we give them priority. We say, look, guys, we want to sell more shares to the market, but instead of we sell it to strangers, since you guys already bought shares, we are giving you a chance to buy more shares. Okay, we're giving you a chance to buy more shares, meaning we injected 100,000 the first time. You're going to inject another 100,000. So for the next 60 days, you can say that anybody who has 5 shares, okay, this gives you, you can buy 2 more shares. So this is what we refer to as a pro rata basis. Why are we doing 5 for 2? It could be anything. I mean, you could say 8 for 4 or 10 for whatever. It doesn't matter. The ratio is just, this is just so that you give everybody a fair chance, because there are some people who have a lot of money. And when you say we are injecting more shares, that guy will just be like, yeah, I'll buy 50% of the shares. And suddenly they get a seat in the board of directors and then they start bothering you. So at this point, we're just making sure that everybody has an equal chance to own the shares by using the shares they already have. So the more you have, the more you get. It's like those biblical principles. You know, there is that principle in the Bible, the Matthew principle, which says, to those who have more, what happens? Your CRE, that's the day you guys didn't go for CRE lesson. Sarah, what does it say? To those who have more?
Too much is given, much is expected.
Hakuna, hiyo ni watu wa kuomba. That is for people who are that's for the people who just want to borrow. Actually, it
We
says,
didn't do CRE.
so it says, to those who have more will be given. That's anyway, that one is only in Matthew. So that's the Matthew principle, okay? So you see, in this case, the person who has 5 shares gets 2, which means the person who has 20 shares has 4 chances times 2. So that means they get 8, okay? Because they have more. So that's that. So this is only happening because the company already exists in the stock exchange. So notice, if it doesn't exist, IPO. If it already exists, then it's rights issue. But again, look, these 2 things are for public, or let me just say for listed companies, or the public traded company. Because again, most of the things we're doing in company law here are just for public traded company. But in a private company, if you're trying to raise shares, rather not shares, you're trying to raise capital. If you're trying to raise capital, you're not going to sell your shares to the public. You will look for private individuals to buy your shares. So this is what we call private equity. By the way, if you're investing, you know, people who are really investing in companies don't understand. There's a lot of money in private equity. Okay, there's no money in listed companies. Like right now, you find somebody who's trying to pretend that they know how to invest, and then they're like, you know, I bought shares. It's like, where? in the stock exchange, like, yeah, you're getting nothing. Okay. How about buying shares in private equity or the mutual funds? Okay. Then you'll make some money because they're money. Because but then again, we say to those who have more will be given. And then you say from what how did that principle go again? To whom much is given, much is expected. So that is also another principle. Okay. So if you buy shares in private companies, just remember, since you've invested more, you can lose a lot because it works that way. Okay. Now, right. So the next thing is, what are the methods? So remember we said, how do we raise shares? Okay, notice how we are working. We started with what is share capital? What are the various types of share capital? How do we raise share capital? And now we've said you can raise through IPO, you can raise through rights issue. But which methods are we going to use if you're raising capital? Okay, so now there are three methods. Okay, first of all, is there any question before we continue the methods? Because we could be moving very fast and some people are behind. Any question?
No question.
All right. So now, here's the thing. Okay, no question. At this point, here's what we're talking about. You have a company. In fact, let me just use the whiteboard thing rather than. So you have a company. Let's call it X, Y, Z, and let's say this is a software company. There's this software company called NVIDIA. It's an American thing, so don't even worry about it. But the value of that company just doubled overnight, and guys are like, "What happened?" Yeah, that's a very interesting game to play. So anyway, we have this. It's not NVIDIA; it's just a software company. So they want to raise capital. Which methods do they use? Number one, placing. So placing simply means placing those shares with a broker. So we have XYZ, which tells a broker that, look, here are the shares, go and sell the shares to the public. End of story. So the broker looks for people. It's like, you guys need to buy shares, blah, blah, blah. They run advertisements. They make phone calls a lot. I have an opportunity. If you invest now, blah, blah, blah. So they're trying to convince the public to buy shares of XYZ. Maybe they succeed, maybe they don't succeed. So at this point, if they manage to sell the shares, good. If they fail to sell the shares, XYZ is still stuck with the story of no capital. Okay, that's it. That's number one, placing. Now, if the company wants more assurance, then they can go with number two, which is expensive anyway. There is offer for sale. So in order to understand offer for sale, we need to understand that we have companies called issuing houses. These companies are simply designed to help other companies raise capital. You see, there is a lot of money that is made. If you look at these banker types, the investment bankers, like in a Jim Nambaru and those guys, okay? They have a lot of billions. And then you think, why did these guys get money from? Because they got money because, well, when you're trading money, you make a lot of money. It's just one of those concepts where you don't look at, you look at money as the product. Like three things which will always make you money. One, telling people how to make money. Number two, relationship advice or relationship related things. And number three, health. People always want to invest in those areas because those are the areas people become very desperate. I mean, you can just look at like how people pay a lot of attention to those shows of Akinas G Maina Kageni, and then that other one for G people breaking up in the morning. Because that's the thing. So the same thing, okay? And then you look at how people end up flocking in those blogs which say how to make $10,000 in a month. It's like, wow. But how to make 5,000 shillings in a day. It's like, I really need to know how to do that. You don't have a skill. So there are companies that are just designed to help companies to raise money. For example, CITAM or Mutual, Britam, they have those things. So what is happening here is that XYZ will sell, okay, their shares to an issuing house. Okay, so let me call it issuing house. And then the issuing house will resell the shares to the public. So normally is where the truth is this company becomes an underwriter. So they tell this company, look, you guys are looking for money, right? Yes. We are going to sell these shares for you people. And the ones that are not bought, we will buy them. Okay, so either way, we guarantee to give you money. So this is where the investment banker or the investment bank comes in. So there's a retail bank. When you go to bank and you deposit your check, that's just retail banking. So now with investment banking, we're talking about things like this now. This is just one of them. So they are helping companies raise capital. Of course, there's going to be a price. This company will have to either sell these shares to these people at a discount or whatever it is. So that's method one. This is method two. Method three, the company can decide to just sell direct. So XYZ sells direct to the public. It's like, guys, come buy our shares. Okay, we call this one prospectors. So prospectors sell. We just convince them. And if you watched Shark Tank or those other derivatives, Lions, what was it called? Lions Den or something. They're those derivatives of Shark Tank, where then the one of the company just say, hi, I'm so and so, my company does this, and I'm looking for X amount of money in exchange for X amount of shares. That is a prospectus sale. It's a direct sale. Okay. Although in that Shark Tank, what you don't know is that that company, what is it called? ABC usually take 5% of the transaction, but doesn't matter. That's a different story. So that's a direct sale. So these are three ways in which companies, or three methods, not ways, three methods companies can use to raise capital. So placing, offer, and prospectors. Any question? Anything that needs
Mwalimu,
clarity?
in option B, under option B, offer to sell, offer for sale,
Yes.
the XYZ company becomes the underwriter.
No. The underwriter is the issuing house.
Oh, okay.
Because think of it this way. Let's say you have a company, right? And you are looking for 1 million. Okay. Now you have to sell your shares for 1 million. So you are hoping that people will buy the shares. But if you're selling anything, you know that there is no guarantee. Maybe they won't buy. So if I approach you and tell you, look, let me sell these things for you, and then you ask me, what guarantee do you have that I will get my 1 million? And then I tell you, I guarantee you'll get your 1 million. It's either we'll get it from those people, or I'll give you the 1 million in exchange for all those shares. So now I go and sell the shares, and then the ones that have not been sold, I look at the difference and I underwrite to you, or I write you that check and that difference. And then I continue to sell the shares. So here's where it gets interesting. In this way, I usually say, if you want to make money, just go and work in the stock exchange, okay? Okay, not work, but just become a bank. Because working is not the same thing. Become a bank. Banks make money out of nothing. You know that concept, the biblical concept of, and the word became flesh. That's banking. You just tell somebody you have money and then you charge them interest. They don't have money. So you see, when we bought those shares, you're selling them at 10. And then I negotiate, I say, sell them to me at 8. You say, how about 9? Okay, I'll buy them at 9. So I've bought them from you at 9. Well, I've given you your 1 million, right? Now, I go and resell these things to the public. Okay. So in the public, I might sell them. I'll sell for 10, first of all, as we agreed, 10. But then, I'm charging these public people a fee, a transaction fee. So I'm not only charging this number of public transaction fee, I've also charged you 1 shillings per share. So I'm making money here and I'm making money here. Now, the reason why you can't complain is because I've guaranteed you'll get what you want. Okay. In the meantime, I might also have my own company here called X that I will use to buy a lot of the shares. So maybe other shares, I've bought them here, 25% of these shares through my other, we call them the satellite. Okay. Satellite, our satellite companies or our satellite investment, whatever. These are just other people who are not, they're associated with us, but indirectly. So now when the shares go up, we can tell these guys to sell. When they sell the shares, we make our money and we run away. So it's, anyway, you won't tell them that because it will look like it's a shady deal, but it's a very interesting. That's the reason why you see these investors, somebody tells you they're earning, their salary is 30 million per month. And then you're like, how? Well, because that's what they're doing. They're just moving money around. So it becomes, anyway, any other question? Any question?
So the issuing company, the issuing house performs the same role like the broker.
The broker. The difference is that with them, usually the broker, if they can't sell, they just return the shares. The issuing company cannot return the shares because they've already bought the shares from you. Okay. Remember, let's see if that thing is still up. So remember with the issuing house, you sold the shares to the issuing house and then they resell. So, but with the broker, it's like
Yes, sir.
so it's like okay, supermarkets don't do this anymore. But imagine have you ever understood the business model of a supermarket? What do they sell? Not what do you buy from a supermarket. I'm saying the business model of a supermarket. How exactly does a supermarket work? Do you understand it? Funny, is it something you have to think about? If you have your product and you want it to be sold at the supermarket, what is the supermarket offering you? They're offering you shelf space. And then there are those attendants there. That's it. So they're in the business of shelf. So unless they have their own products which they can buy, then they repackage and then they sell. But mostly they'll just get these things from suppliers, they stock them, and then at the end of, well, it depends on how many months, the supplier will come for their check. Then supermarket cuts their share. Okay? Because you won't just start by creating a thing and saying space available. No, you'll have to go and buy those things. But as time goes by, you can start having deals with suppliers. You just come and restock, and then you cut them their check. Okay, so that is the same thing with with the broker. But now, if the supermarket decides to have its own products, where they physically go to people who sell sugar, buy sugar, come pack them there. So if these sugar aren't bought, the supermarket incurs the loss. Okay, so notice 2 different business models in the same business. Model 1, you have your product, you want it to be sold at a given chain of supermarket, maybe Quickmart or Naivas. You go discuss with Naivas or Quickmart and say, I have these beauty products and I'd like to pay for shelf space. And then I'd prefer closer to the entrance. And then that means you'll pay more compared to somebody who gets Ukonyuma. And so you stop, you make sure that all these retails or these outlets, let's call them outlets, have your product. And so that's it. So they sell, at the end of the day, you go take your check minus their commission and you move on. See, that's brokerage. The other version is they tell you, how about you buy this thing from you? We'll be buying from you at this price as long as every time you guarantee us this level of quality and quantity. That becomes the issuing house. I mean, the model is like the issuing house, but you can't call them an issuing house. Is that clear?
Yes, Malim.
Yep. So now, the last one we said was prospectors, where they simply sell direct to the public. And that is where we end up with the question of prospectus. So the thing you have to remember here is that when we talk about prospectus, you're simply talking about a document or communication that is designed to entice the public to buy the shares of a company. Okay, that's it. Like, why would you buy shares in our company? Well, because we've convinced you to buy it. So that process is called prospectus. And this is the reason why remember in the law of contract, we said offer plus acceptance. But the company doesn't want to make you an offer. The company wants to invite you to come and make them an offer. Okay? It's like, let me make it a bit social. It's like dating. See, there are two things that can happen in a date. One, you can see someone, you like them, and then you go and say hi. And then probably you hope they like you too. Or number two, you can just behave in a way that you're hoping will attract their attention, and then they will come and say hi to you. So when what a company is doing with prospectors is behaving in a way that will attract the potential investor's attention, and then this person will come and make the company an offer. Except the difference is that, what if the company lies? Which is the same as in the social setup. I mean, people lie. Like, they dress in a certain way, they apply makeup. But nowadays, even men do makeup, so which is weird. So all that stuff. So what if the company lied in the prospectus? See, that's a thing. Okay. So first of all, let's talk about the legal requirements of a prospectus, because in as much as a prospectus is not an offer, okay, it's designed to entice the potential investor. So there are things which have to be for. Number one, it must be issued by a company after it has been incorporated. Because otherwise, remember we talked about pre-incorporation contract. If the company doesn't exist and yet the promoters are busy selling shares of that company, then see, that's illegal. Okay. Number two, it should contain all the particulars required by the Companies Act, in this case, matters and reports. So reports, financial reports, and matters that are relevant to the shareholders, like how many shares should you have, how much are they, and we'll look at that in like a few seconds. Number three, it must have a date, because then how can you say bought these shares on this day? When do we know? Okay. Contain the signatures of the directors and all the people. In fact, anybody whose name appears in the prospectus, they have to sign it. And then that prospectus is supposed to be accompanied by the application form. Nowadays, they can do it online. So a company can, you can have a YouTube video where you're talking about how good your company is, how much you're making, and you're looking for investors. And if anybody's interested, go to our website, click, blah, blah, blah. Okay. But then you give a warning there. All the warnings, disclaimers, like, we are not making this offer for the public. We're just making it for the people who are this type and are interested. That way you are not sued by the Capital Market Authority for making a public offer when your company is private, because you can really, really get into a lot of trouble. So now, under these ones, it should contain particulars. What are these particulars? Okay. So these particulars are what we're referring to as matters and reports. So the matters that have to be stated will be things, things that are relevant to investors, like who are the directors, who are the auditors of the company, are there any preliminary expenses? Okay, as an investor, what do you need to know? Like, how many shares should you buy? How much per share? Where do you pay? And also, what exactly does the company do? Okay, what is the company's business? So that's important, because otherwise, there's a difference between the brand and what the company actually does. It's like when people see Safaricom making billions in profits, and then most people think, yeah, it's because of the airtime. It's not because of the airtime. I mean, people, if you look at how much you spend on your phone, you'll realize, unless you're a salesperson, you don't spend a lot of money on the phone making calls. You spend a lot of money on data, okay? And you spend a lot of money on transactions. You don't even notice, but you realize you sent someone 200 bucks, and then you sent another person 150, and then you sent another person 1,000. You know, if you had withdrawn all this money and just gave them cash, you'll only spend 30 bucks or something. I'm assuming that's the withdrawal charge. Although nowadays it differs, but I'm assuming that is like the standard for 1,000. So if you had withdrawn these, you'll spend 30 and then you just give people money, shika, cash, done. But not because you've been doing this, Mara, you paid 15, 7, what? So all those transaction charges plus the data charges, and then you didn't even make any call because you're busy on WhatsApp. And then like, how are they making this profit? Because that is their business. So these are things that are stated there to entice the person to buy. Now, regarding the reports, they're going to be the auditor's reports, okay, showing the company's income statement for the last 5 years. Have they issued any dividends? Are there any assets and liabilities? Are they balanced? Okay. And then we have the other reports, like how have they been, you know, the general financial reports, because we have the so-called auditor's report. Now, what are the financial reports that we can expect? Yeah, so these are kawaida to the ones that you guys do in accounting. So those ones also have to be stated. And then, you know, do they have subsidiaries? If they have a subsidiary, like that company owns another company, can you get those reports? Because that other company is also going to be taking money away from this other company. So all these are things, matters that are going to be stated. Okay, so matters and reports. Right. Any question after that bit? Because I'm not going past there. So in your notes, make sure you read. Start reading from the liabilities going forward. Okay. Like look at this example. Let me give you a question here. So let's say you tell people to invest in your company. Okay. And you tell them that your company is going to be dealing in software. They're going to be doing softwares. Which kind of softwares? Softwares that are designed to guide military drones. Okay. And you've just landed a contract with the defense, the Ministry of Defense. You have a defense contract. That's a lot of money. Those are billions. So when people are buying shares, they're looking at these billions. But then that following week, there's a scandal. You as the CEO have a scandal, and the defense people withdraw their contract. Meanwhile, people have already bought shares. So can these people sue you, claiming that you lied to them in that contract, or is it just bad luck? So that's the thing. Okay, think about along those lines. When you convince people to buy your shares, and then it turns out there is something missing, can they sue you? So read liabilities, okay, in prospectus, and pretty much everything else that follows after that. I'm saying read. Have I sent you these notes? Do you guys have notes?
You've not.
Yeah,
No.
I'm saying. Yeah, remember to send. Tomorrow. Tomorrow will even be Nairobi here. Probably be shooting some documentary. Anyway, just remind me to send you those notes, and then you can do that. Any question so far from shares, from share capital, from whatever? Any question?
No question, Mariam.
Okay, so have a lovely evening, and then we'll pick from here in the next class. So in the next class, we'll finish this topic and start the other topic, debt capital. So if you miss that class, you'll probably just end up in the next class and you're like, why are we studying directors? What happened to topic 6? Okay, so have a lovely evening.